Hey everyone, this is Tiger with one more line of code. We're going to get moving here, or continuing, I guess. This will be episode 5. We stopped our last episode kind of halfway through because the episode that I recorded was quite a bit long. Just it's a pretty heavy topic. So this is a continuation right from there. I think there's a second or two kind of cut out of it, and then we'll just continue. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. Let's get database. What time are we at? I don't know if I got enough time to do this. This is either going to be a long one or I'm going to break this up into parts right now. So persistence. We are going to add some NuGet packages. Let's see. I need entity framework core in persistence. And I also need PostgreSQL. Those will be it for now. We're also going to need to put tools on another one, but I want to wait on that because that's going to cause a problem, and I want to show you the problem because it's another funky one that I think not a lot of people run into because it's just a goofy error. I've got an entity framework core sitting here, and we can use it now. I don't have Postgres installed on this machine, so I got to go do that quick. Well, let's go do that. Let's see here. Is that on the screen mostly? Yep. Let's go download. That's funny. Some JetBrains thing is the first thing to come up. DigitalOcean, Postgres. There we go. Download for the Windowses. Download the installer. x86-64. Did that just drop behind? It did. Okay. It wouldn't let me zoom while I was in there. Okay. Let's see. Next. Installation directory. Sure. SQL Server. Yep. pgadmin in order to handle it. Yep. Stack Builder. I don't have a clue what the hell that is. Command line. I don't know. I'm not going to use any of those. Next. Data directory. C program. I don't want that on C. I don't want my my database stuff on my C drive just because I have a little bit of a smaller C drive, but I have these kind of bigger, extra drives. So I'm just going to dump everything Postgres into this folder. My magic password. Port, sure. Locale, sure. Next. Next. Yeah. And I guess we will wait. Cue the speed time, right? And she's done. It's asking me if I want to launch Stack Builder. I guess I will. Welcome to Stack Builder. This is my install. Oh, it's like an add-ons thing, like to download add-ons. I don't know if I need any stuff here with the exception of these database drivers. This NPG SQL one, which is the .NET data provider for Postgres. We may need to go back and do some other stuff. Where did that just drop behind? Click next to start installation. Okay. Done. Packages you've selected have finished. Okie doke. I think I have Postgres installed now. I got pgadmin at least. That's a start. Of course, the password that I used. And I've got some stuff in here, I guess. That's cool. That's cool. So, got a database installed now. Let's get back to it. I pin this to the bottom, just so that's there. And I've got a user table. I've got Postgres installed. And I've got entity framework, NuGet packages on my persistence now. I have a few more things to do here though. All right, in persistence, let's create our database context. We're going to need to do quite a few things, but in order to get started, we really just need to, this is going to get set up. I don't know where, but this is going to be 2 parts, 3 parts, whatever we need to do here. I'm going to crank through this all in one go. So I'm going to add a couple directories. One, of course, for the logging database, logging DB, let's call it, and then the Riome DB. And that, of course, as I already discussed, is for the 2 different databases. I'm going to create a common folder, just because I know already I'm going to need to use to share some things between the 2. Let's get started with my Riome context. Riome DbContext. This is normally going to inherit from DbContext. This will be sealed. And it's usually going to take some options. Yep. Basically that. DbContext options of the context that you are creating, and pass that up to base. DbContext takes an options field. There's an override for on model configuring. I think it's on model creating is the one that I want. I'm going to use this for doing some magic. And in here, I'm going to need to kind of tell this what my tables are. This is kind of one of those annoying pieces that I do have to kind of manually do. Users, which is set user. I'm going to wrap these. These are going to grow. I'm just going to put them in a region for clarity later, so I can kind of minimize. This name, this users, whatever you name this, is usually what we're going to be using code first migrations. The migrations will grab the table name based off of whatever you're calling this. So if you're calling it, some random table name, you will have a table called some random table name. Okay. So if you pluralize, which I'm going to, you'll get a dbo.users or a public.users or a, I don't know what everybody's default schema is, but you got a users table. Okay, this is the base, the very bare minimum of what we need to get kind of started here. The other things that I need to do, of course, are get one of these fired up for services. So I need to register the DbContext and services. And then I need to make a code first migration. We can test that manually, and then we'll create a repository in order to actually test like a simple query, just for the sake of testing that all out. So we got a bit to go here, but we're making really good progress. Very, very easy, very basic DbContext. This is what we've got. We're obviously going to expand on this quite a bit, but let's get started just with this. So I'm going to start setting this up for services. In dependency injection on persistence, of course, because we're going to, inject that. I'm going to make a function for add Riome DB, which will take iService collection. And I'm going to take the configuration options as well. Because I'm taking the iConfig, I need to grab iConfiguration here as well. Because add persistence now needs add configuration, I got to go to the web API where it gets called in program and give it configuration. Builder configuration. Cool. Now back here, I'm going to call add Riome DB, passing services and configuration. Now, why the heck do we need configuration? We need configuration because I need to get the connection string. So the connection string, look at that. So configuration.get connection string will read your app settings for a field called connection strings. It must be named thusly. And then it'll look for a field called RiomeDB. I'm going to change this just to Riome. So let's go make our connection strings. In our app settings, I'm putting this in a web API. I'm also going to need to add it onto web admin for later. Connection strings. It must be named and spelled exactly connection strings, otherwise that auto field won't pick it up. If you name this something different, you can still manually grab it. You just got to know what the heck you called it. It's not some crazy, super secret. And I need a connection string for that Postgres deal. I don't know connection strings for every database on the planet off the top of my head. Connection string. Connectionstrings.com. That looks like it'll do it. Looks like it's sorted by libraries. So .connect, OLEDB, .NET Framework, SQL ODBC, NPG, whatever the heck, this thing. I think that's what we're using. So if I basically take this setup, let's see, using Windows security with a command timeout, connection timeout, using SSL, without SSL. Let's start with just the regular one for now. Oopsie, app settings. So, I of course will be on localhost, which, 12, whatever the heck it is, 127.0.0.1 is fine. I'm going to make a database called Riome, of course. User ID, it says, is my username and my password. Those don't exist, but let's go make some defaulty ones here. I missed all that, didn't I? I did. All I did is I took the connection string here and I dumped it into app settings here. I just pasted it and then changed this to localhost and changed the database to Riome. Okay. But we're going to update these user ID and password now. So back to our Postgres thing. pgadmin. Let's get a little more here. So under Postgres, I've got this login groups. Got all these default ones. We're just going to add one for ourselves right now. I'm just going to call it dev. And I'm going to make the password dev. And the privileges are going to be everything except whatever streaming replication and backups is. Not going to do anything there. Not going to do anything there. Nothing there. Okay. That's it. Just going to make a dev. Should be done. Dev. So we just created that user now. We've got our keys and stuff in here. You don't really want to leave these in here. We'll work on that later. For right now, we're getting started and just kind of testing everything along. What will actually happen is our connection strings on development, for example, will stay this route. But our app settings main one, this will probably change to, something different where we kind of load these, secondarily, and this will probably have an actual like IP address, etc. I don't know, but for the current instance, the way that app settings works, just in case nobody or you really knew, when you're publishing anything, it takes app settings.json as like the first layer. If you're publishing to development, it will take anything in development and put it on top and overwrite anything that it can overwrite. If it's only exists in development, it'll still exist. If it exists in regular app settings and development, it'll be overwritten to whatever the development is. If it only exists in app settings, it'll still be there. So in our case, because I'm going to keep this one the same as this one for right now, I'm going to just delete this because they're identical. But if I did something like, I don't know, some, foo, right? And I call this bar in my app settings JSON, but in my development, I did something like a foo is other, and I run this, what I would get is I would get other. If I'm on development. If I publish this to a production environment, I would get just bar. It'll ignore the development version. There is also an app settings.staging that you can do. It's app settings dot whatever environment name you want to come up with. The environment name is generally set by environment variables that you can set up on your servers. But also just when we're running, I think it's in properties, you'll see in launch settings, it's this environment variable, what to use. So we're never running HTTP, we're always running HTTPS. So this HTTP ASP.NET Core environment, you can go and set this environment variable in your staging environment or your development or your production environment to production or staging, etc. So in this case, because we're running this, it's kind of faking the environment variable to this development. But if you go to your system environment variables, I don't think I have anything here that's going to get me in any trouble. Let's see if we can log in or zoom in on this. There. What you would do is in your system variables, you would add a new one called whatever that was, ASP.NET Core. I don't remember what it was, but it would, I could grab it here quick. It'd be this, and then you would do production, or you would do staging, etc. So on my staging environment, I have this environment variable set up. Click OK, and then OK. Environment variables do require a reboot. So especially system ones, you need to reboot your environment for them to take effect. Just keep that in mind if you're running on, cloud servers and whatever. Anyways, the tangent again. App settings. Let's get rid of my foobar stuff. Let's get rid of my dev foo stuff. I have a connection string in here. In theory, this will work. In theory, this will find the database. I'm not zoomed out again. I deleted all my foo stuff. I'll get better about zooming, I promise. I promise. I'm working on it. I have a connection string. I have a DbContext. I have to get back to my dependency injection now that I have a connection string. And just in case you needed it, if you ever needed, like if this was not in a connection strings, whatever the heck thing, I think it's just like get section, like whatever your section name. Right? And then you can do a bunch of things. You can do get and parse it to something, right? If it's just a string. So you do this. I guess that's not happy. That would be, this will get whatever's in section name as a string. If you had section name Riome, you could Riome this bad boy. But you can also create a class that will take in several fields. So in this sense, like logging, I guess log level, I could make a class that has a default string and a Microsoft.ASP.NET Core string, and I could say, create this as a log. It'd be like logging. What was it? Level? I don't remember what it was called, but you get the idea. You just semicolon these across, cast it to whatever the heck type you need, and it'll pull that in for you. It's really what I think this is even doing behind the scenes. If we pull this up, yeah, you can see it's doing like a get connection or get section connection string, so it must be named appropriately, and it's using the what do you call that? The index grab based on the name that you pass. So it's another way to do it. It'll always give you a string. So to literally mimic, it would be get section, foo section, right? And it'd be Riome, and this would give me some string. Yeah, that's all that's going on behind the scenes here. All right, let's set up our DbContext finally, as I've gone down like 18 tangents. Sorry, database. There's a lot going on with database. Okay, there's a lot of abstraction we're going to be doing here, so I'm getting excited. Services, add DbContext. Okay, I am not going to be using this. I'll explain why in a bit, but we're going to start with it. Okay, I just want to get started this route so you can see kind of what we're doing. In general, this is the very basic setup for a DbContext. We're always going to get some options thing, and we need to use the options thing in order to declare what we're going to be doing with this. So we know we're going to be using np SQL, which I assume takes a connection string. And what else? Some npg SQL options builder. So let's see what that is. I should spell properly. So what do we got in here? Map and enum. I'm not a big Postgres person, so these are a little bit new to me, so I'm kind of just seeing what we got here. I've never heard of Redshift either, so I'm a little bit lost on that one. Enable retry, migrations, max. Query splitting we might use. Okay. Okay. So I don't think we need to change anything in there per se right now. This will give me a database context from services that I can use at a bunch of different places. So let's do that in a terrible, we should never do this kind of way in order to test. What we need to do first is we need to get this database created. And in order to do that, we have to run code first migrations. This is going to be a bit of a chore for me. The entity framework, so in Rider, there's an entity framework core migration tool. I don't like it. I'm sure it works great, and everybody, whoever's using it, I'm sure it's working great for them. I've had so many problems with this version of it that I just cannot use it anymore. And even right now, so this is a clean install. I haven't tried this yet, but I'm almost positive this is going to break to start. Now, if I open up, I'm going to install Visual Studio, and we're going to do that. I'm sure that's going to break too, but at least that's going to tell me what's wrong. I can fix it, and then from that point, it'll work from then on. This one probably won't from the get-go, even once I do the little fix. But just for the sake of, let's go down this path so I can show you why, and you can give me crap for it later, okay? So I'm going to hit Add Migration. Add Migration is to create this very first Riome migration, which will create a users table. It'll also create the database, but also create a users table. If I hit Add Migration, it tells me EF Core Tools is required. To use EF Core in the IDE, install .NET EF as a global tool, and I can click Install. So I can do this, or I can go install Visual Studio and it'll work from the get-go, but EF Core Tools still won't be installed global, whatever the heck, right? Just to give this a try, to make an actual effort here. I'm gonna add migrations. I'm gonna hit install on this. It says successfully installed. We're good to go, right? Cool. Now can I open this thing? Entity Framework Core, add migration. Looks like it, so that's a start. Let's give this a shot. So my migration name is going to be initial. You always have to give it some kind of a name. Initial is usually the very first one. Your migrations project, where your DB contexts are, is persistence. My startup project is Web API, which is not here. Now, why the heck is it not here? Your project is not listed. Let's click on help. This is the error that Visual Studio would have told me about. It says, why can't I see my project in startup fields? So number one most likely cause is you don't have Entity Framework Core design or Entity Framework Core tools NuGet package installed. Okay, so that is what's going on. I'm already aware of that. So let's go do that quick. So let's cancel this. I have to install the tools onto the Web API. So on Web API, I'm going to find Entity Framework Core tools. Pretty sure that's the one. And I install this on Web API. Now it also said design. I don't think I need design, but in order to try to make this as happy as I possibly can, I do have design on whatever it's called already, on persistence, and it looks like this already came as part of framework tools, so that's good. There is also a PostgreSQL design. To be fair and try to make sure I give it a full shot here, I'm assuming we're going to need the PostgreSQL design as well, because since we're going to a Postgres database. So I'm going to add that one as well to Web API. Okay. Now, in theory, I can go to my tools, I can go to Entity Framework Core, I can add migration, initial, persistence. I see Web API now. So migrations project is persistence. This is where your DB contacts are and where you want your migrations folder to be and where kind of the database stuff lives. Startup project is where the start of your project is, so that dependency injection will know how to kind of load the context. DbContext class, in this case, I've only got one of them, so it's DbContext. Riome DbContext. In a short amount of time, I'll have two of them here. Migrations folder. I actually don't want this in migrations. I actually want this, I believe this is in the persistence folder. It would just put a migrations folder there. I want this one actually in Riome DB as migrations. Because I'm going to have two migrations, I don't want all of them merged together into one migrations folder. I want logging DB migrations and Riome DB migrations. So I'm going to tell it I want Riome DB migrations. I'm going to leave the rest of this alone. Skip the project, build, or whatever, build config, target framework. I'm going to leave it all default. It says EF Core tools. I got global 9.0. Let's run our very first migration using Rider and their wonderful tool. I get an error occurred trying to start process.NET with working directory, eWorkspace Riome system can't find the specified file. So I tried to run .NET, EX, EF Core migrations, etc., etc., etc. If I go look this up, I can tell you already because I ran into this trying to make, a year or two ago. What this is telling me is basically I don't have .NET in one of the folder for this .NET. I don't have apparently anywhere in my tools, I guess, or this .NET doesn't exist or something like that. It's a Win32 exception, an error occurred trying to start process.NET with the working directory of eWorkspace Riome. System can't find the specified file. I'm assuming that means it can't find .NET, because I know eWorkspace Riome exists. I don't know. It's a real pain. and I don't want to deal with it. I could try to do a reboot and start it. I could waste the time, but honestly, it's going to give me the same error. I've done this enough times. I don't care anymore. So this is why the only reason why I need Visual Studio, I'm literally going to install Visual Studio just to do migrations. So let's go do that. Download Visual Studio Community. Download. Go ahead and close this. This is installing the Visual Studio installer, and then it'll install Visual Studio after that. The Visual Studio install will be another long one, but I will speed us through it. I just want to make sure that you guys can see what I'm clicking on here, because we don't need much. The only thing I'm going to check here is this ASP.NET and web development. All of these other options I'm actually going to leave off. I'm not doing anything with them. You can if you want. It's not going to hurt anything. But I'm literally just going to check the ASP.NET web development something or other. And install. And now, you know, cue up the pause music, I guess. Let's do it. Okay, Visual Studio is done. It recommends rebooting to clean up any remaining files. And normally I wouldn't, but because I do want to run one more try with the you know, baked in rider one, we're going to go ahead and do a reboot. So I'll see you in a second. Okay, right back to it. And first things first, let's give Riome another shot here. Now that this rebooted, I'm assuming that that environment path that it needed, that it should have, I expect, wrote when it was doing its install. I have gotten this to work before, but even then I still kind of run into issues with it. But let's just give it another try. Wait for it to load up. Okay. Tools, Entity Framework Core, Add Migration. So initial, persistence, web API, it remembers everything, which is great. I should be able to just hit OK. It does look like it's going to do it this time. We got a build started. And succeeded. Host was aborted. This is expected error. So it actually worked this time. That's awesome. Like, so it just needed the reboot. Hooray! All right. So in theory, we can use this from now on, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. Let's go take a look at this migration. So database migration here. It's kind of like a C# instruction manual for how to write the scripts and send to the database and all this kind of stuff. Basically, it's saying, hey, go ahead and create a table called users with these columns, and here's your primary key, which is interesting because I never told it what the primary key is. It figured this out because I called it ID. So this is, you know, just naming conventions getting picked up automatically, which is fine. That's the idea anyways, but we'll do some additional work to this later. These are text fields. You can see that email is marked as not nullable, but first name, last name, and phone are marked as nullable, which is good because if you remember, I'd marked these as nullable options. We don't require them anymore, but email is required. So we didn't even need to, you know, tell the database that these were going to be nullable or not. It worked based off of the nullability fields. Create date times. I don't know Postgres enough to know if timestamp with time zone is the right field, but I have to assume it is. So I guess, you know, the EF Core tooling set here works. Visual Studio would have given me the same script. It's just I don't have to go through the whole mess of it there. But if I can make it work using just writer now, I think I'll stay this course and see what we can do. I think for the next migration that I need to do, I'll use Visual Studio just to show you how it works in there, just in case, depending on what kind of issues you guys run into. But for the rest of the video, if I can keep this working, I'll keep trying to use the built-in writer one. Okay, so I've got this migration now. I got a couple different options here. I can forcibly run this, which is what I'm going to do. I can push this migration to the database. Or I can set up services that will fire a migrate the database thing. We're going to do that later, but for this very first one, I just want to push this manually to make sure that everything kind of pops up. So first, let's open our pgadmin and just make sure nothing exists in there so that we can kind of see the difference of before and after. I glossed over this error, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. We don't have a design time builder, and the way that this add migrations things work, it kind of starts up the project and reads the context, reads the files that it needs to, generates a script, and then kills the project. On the kill, you will very often get this host aborted because it killed before everything was kind of fully in place. So this is actually our console error message, application terminated unexpectedly. It's actually our fatal log right here getting picked up along with the exception, because we didn't make it all the way through the full creation, because it didn't need to go all the way through. So this error right now can get ignored. pgadmin, servers, let's go into our databases. And if I just refresh, I've only got a Postgres one, so we're missing a Riome one. Now, here I can go back to my tools, my Entity Framework core, and I can run update database. Use 0 as a target migration to undo all applications. Okay. We only have the one migration, but I assume there will be a list here, and it'll always kind of give us the top one, which is what we want. Same thing, our migrations is persistent startup web API. Of course, that's the DbContext. Use the default connection of the startup project, sure. Leave everything else alone. This is just going to leave this alone. Fire. So it should have run now. So if I refresh, I have a Riome database. And if I go to my public schema, do I have a users table? I do. Yay. That's cool. I also have this EF migrations table. This table will store the migrations that have run on here, so it knows not to rerun old ones. This is very, very, very common. You can change the name of this table if you need to. I'm not going to. I don't care. Awesome. So we've got tables now. I guess I can zoom this in, but you saw enough of it. All right. Now I have EF core migration set up. I have a DbContext set up. I have tables set up. I want to at least run a test to try to connect to it. Because there's nothing in there, I won't be able to read anything out, but at least I can do it, a connection and test by querying how many users are in there, and I should get a 0 back, right? I have to break some rules just to run the test because we don't have everything set up that we need to run that. So in health checks in our endpoints on Web API, I'm going to set up one more endpoint, and I'm just going to call this DB. And I won't have a handler for this because handlers can't use the DbContext directly. So I'm actually going to inject my DbContext right here. Don't ever do this unless you're testing. This is bad form. So what I should be able to do is say count equals context users count. Sure. And I can just, say where not deleted, right? And then if count, I guess let's just always return the count. Let's do this for now. So we're going to count how many users are in there and just respond with it. Cool. Super simple, bad form, but we're just trying to test. What this lets us know is that this actually was able to make a connection to the database, count the number of users, and come back. It's a very realistic test scenario. Just, can I connect to the database, right? Let's get our postman moving. Zoom. I'm going to take my health check fail. I'm going to duplicate it. Health check DB. Change the fail to a DB. Save and run. And I get a 0. It's working. And you can see here, it even kind of tells me it spit out like the command that it ran. Select count as an int from users, where not deleted. Interesting. We're not going to want these, commands logged all the time, but it is nice for testing just to kind of get these logged. We're going to have to shut off a lot of these logs later on, especially as we're going out to production. But we've got database, we've got a connection, we've got everything we need. So let's continue on with that. Actually, no, let's stop there. I want to do a second. I have a lot more to go with this because I need to start abstracting away some of the data stuff. I need to start setting up configurations. I need to start setting up repositories. I have a lot that I want to do, but this actually is probably a really good stop point. We have endpoints, we have handlers, we have a database context, we have our very first table, and we just made a connection to it and we're able to test it all out. Let's call that for today, or at least for right now. I'll probably jump on a little bit later and I'll continue on with the next sections of this. But that's huge. Like we actually did a lot of stuff today in getting this all set up. This is kind of the start of the real meat of the project and what we can do with it. So I hope you're enjoying this and following along really well, and we'll continue to kind of turn this into something awesome. So I guess I'll see you in the next round. And if you're going to binge all the way through, now's a good time. Get up, go stretch, go do something, take a moment to yourself. But I'll see you shortly on the next one.